This is a monkey, and so is this, and so is this. But what truly is a monkey? The more well-read among you would have spotted the chimp and the human and thought those are apes, not monkeys. And that would be, for the most part, correct. But that depends entirely on what we truly define as a monkey. And to know that, we need to trace the evolutionary history of monkeys back to where it all began. To well before the first monkey. Around 66 million years ago, at the KT extinction event, the one that took away all the non-avian dinosaurs, there were small rodent-like creatures scrambling through the forest that began filling the empty Mesozoic world. Some of them were the earliest members of a lineage that would eventually produce every primate alive today. One of the candidates, Purgatorius, is known only from a handful of teeth and jaw fragments found in Montana, but those teeth tell a story. This animal was eating fruits and insects, and its molars have a shape that places it at or very near the base of the primate family tree. It wasn't a monkey. It wasn't even close to a monkey. It was a small, probably tree-dwelling generalist that happened to be standing at the very beginning of a lineage that would, tens of millions of years later, invent philosophy and argue about what counts as a fish. From these early ancestors, the primate lineage began to branch. And the first major fork is one most people have never heard of, but explains a lot. The primates divided early into two major groups, and the easiest way to tell them apart is by their nose. The wet-nosed primates kept a feature that most mammals have, a moist, fleshy nose pad directly connected to the upper lip, which enhances their sense of smell. This group includes lemurs, lorises, and galagos. They are the older branch. Lemurs in particular ended up isolated on Madagascar after it separated from mainland Africa, and evolved in their own direction entirely, producing everything from the tiny-nosed lemur, the smallest primate alive, to the extinct Archaeoindrus, a ground sloth-sized lemur that vanished only after humans arrived on the island. Because, of course they did. The dry-nosed primates lost that moist nose pad, traded some olfactory sensitivity for enhanced color vision, and generally reorganized their sensory priorities around sight rather than smell. This group includes tarsiers, apes, and humans. The tarsier branch split off early and went in its own way, small, nocturnal, and extraordinary. Tarsiers have eyes so disproportionately large relative to their skull that they cannot move in their sockets at all. To look sideways, a tarsier rotates its entire head owl-style nearly 180 degrees. Each eye is roughly the same size as the animal's brain. The remaining dry-nosed monkeys, the simians, are what most people mean when they say primate, and this is where monkey story actually begins. Around 40 to 45 million years ago, the simian lineage was living in Africa and Asia, what was then a connected landmass with a very different geography than today. These were the earliest animals we can reasonably call monkeys. Small, social, largely arboreal, and already showing the enlarged brain-to-body ratios that would come to define the primate lineage. Then, something remarkable happened, and we still don't fully understand how. A population of these early African simians ended up in South America, across an ocean. The leading explanation is a rafting event, a group of animals, probably a small breeding population accidentally carried out to sea on a mass of floating vegetation torn loose by a storm or flood, crossing what was then a narrower but still formidable Atlantic Ocean on a natural raft, over the course of days or weeks. It sounds improbable. It almost certainly was, but it happened, because the alternative, that South American monkeys evolved independently, is genetically ruled out. They came from Africa, they crossed open water, and they survived. And from that accidental crossing, an entire branch of the family tree was born in isolation. The Atlantic crossing created a permanent split. The monkeys that stayed in Africa and Asia became the catarrhines, the Old World monkeys. The ones that made it to South America became the platyrrhines, the New World monkeys. They've been evolving separately for roughly 40 million years. The differences between them are visible if you know what to look for. The New World monkeys often have prehensile tails, tails that can grip, wrap around branches, and support the animal's full body weight. Spider monkeys hang from their tails routinely. Old World monkeys have never evolved to this. Their tails, when present at all, are for balance only. The nose shape differs too. Platyrrhines have wider, more sideways-facing nostrils. Catarrhines have narrower, downward-facing ones. Small anatomical details that carry tens of millions of years of separate history inside them. New World monkeys stayed in South America and diversified into everything from howler monkeys, whose skulls carry 3 kilometers through dense forests, to the pygmy marmoset, the smallest monkey alive, which weighs about as much as a hard-boiled egg. Old World monkeys diversified across Africa and Asia into baboons, macaques, mandrills, colobus, monkeys, and dozens more. They're the ones most people picture when they think of monkeys, but the catarrhine lineage didn't stop there. Around 25 to 30 million years ago, one branch of the Old World catarrhines did something anatomically significant. They lost their tail entirely, or rather, the tail shortened and fused to the base of the spine as a coccyx, the tailbone, and their body proportions shifted. Broader chests, more mobile shoulders, a different relationship between the arms and the trunk. These were the first apes. Apes are not a separate invention. They are catarrhine monkeys that went in a particular direction. The split between Old World and New World monkeys and apes is a branch point within catarrhines, not a separate origin. The ape lineage diversified through the Miocene into a remarkable range of forms. There were dozens of ape species across Africa and Eurasia during the Miocene, far more than exist today. Most of them went extinct. The survivors are the ones we have now: gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees, and bonobos, and one other species that built telescopes and got into arguments about taxonomy. Gibbons split off first, around 18 million years ago. Then the orangutan line, around 14 million years ago, drifted into Southeast Asia. Gorillas split from the lineage that leads to chimps and humans around 9 million years ago. Chimpanzees and humans last shared a common ancestor somewhere between 6 and 7 million years ago. Here is where we arrive at the same place we always arrive. Monkey, as most people use that word, means the catarrhines and platyrrhines, not apes. A macaque is a monkey. A baboon is a monkey. A chimpanzee is not. It's an ape. A human is certainly not. But apes are catarrhines. They evolved from the Old World monkey lineage. They are nested inside it. If you draw a circle around all catarrhines and all platyrrhines and call it monkeys, and then draw a circle inside the catarrhines around apes and say, but not these, you've drawn a paraphyletic group. A phylogenetically valid group that contains macaques and baboons and capuchins and howler monkeys cannot exclude chimpanzees. We are, by the same logic that makes birds reptiles and tetrapods fish, monkeys. Tailless, terrestrial, dangerously overpowered in the frontal cortex, capable of abstract reasoning and interplanetary travel, but monkeys nonetheless. The ape lineage is a branch that grew out of the monkey tree and never stopped being part of it. Now, we've talked about how humans are monkeys and how the rest of apes are monkeys, but there are a few primates that are worth your attention. Primarily the aye-aye, one of my favorite primates. Not a monkey, it's a lemur. But it earns its place here because it's one of the most startling demonstrations of convergent evolutions in the primate order. The aye-aye is native to Madagascar and is, at first glance, deeply unsettling. It has enormous ears, eyes adapted for night vision, ever-growing incisors like a rodent, and one finger on each hand, the third, that is grotesquely elongated and skeletal, like a twig attached to the hand. It uses this finger to tap along the surface of tree bark, listening for hollow spaces underneath, where grubs might be tunneling, then gnaws through the bark with its incisors and uses its elongated finger to fish the larvae out. The exact foraging strategy, acoustic detection, gnawing, extraction of a thin probe, that is also used by the striped possum in Australia and the woodpecker finch in the Galapagos. Three completely unrelated animals on three separate landmasses solving the same problem with the same method, having arrived at it independently. The eye is the primate the rest of the world keeps accidentally reinventing. It is also considered as an omen of death in some Malagasy traditions, which has historically led to them being killed on sight. Not ideal for a species that reproduces slowly and is under pressure from habitat loss. The largest monkey with a tail alive today, by weight, is the mandrill. An adult male mandrill can exceed 35 kilograms, and the face, well, the face is extraordinary. The muzzle is ridged with vivid blue and red colorations. The rump similarly colored in blues, reds, and purples. This is not random decoration. The intensity of the coloration is directly tied to testosterone levels and reflects social rank. The more dominant the male, the more saturated the color. They are essentially wearing their social status on their face permanently. Mandrills live in the rainforests of Central Africa in groups that can number in the hundreds, one of the largest social groupings of any non-human primate. They are largely terrestrial, foraging on the forest floor, but the males carry canine teeth longer than a leopard's. The mandrill is also a good example of why Old World monkey as a category is deceptive in terms of scale. When people picture a monkey, they picture something small. An adult male mandrill would disabuse them of that notion entirely. Now, we can't end the section on monkeys without an animal that makes the argument for the most uncomfortably personal. Chimpanzees. Chimpanzees share roughly 98.7% of their DNA with humans. They use tools, stripping twigs to fish termites from mounds, using stones as hammers to crack nuts, carrying those stones to nut cracking sites and caching them there for future use. They wage war. Documented chimpanzee communities have engaged in sustained, coordinated campaigns against neighboring groups, raiding parties, territorial expansion, the systematic killing of isolated individuals from rival communities over months or years. They grieve. There are documented cases of chimpanzee mothers carrying dead infants for days or weeks, and of communities showing behavioral changes following the death of a long-term member that closely parallel human mourning behavior. They are not humans, obviously, but they are a mirror held up at a very uncomfortable angle, showing us something that is almost us, doing almost what we do, with almost the same face, for almost the same reasons. And they are monkeys, which means, unavoidably, so are we. The tree of life doesn't care about our stupid little groups and our hubris and our dignity. It just keeps branching. Thanks for watching.